Making the right match in MMA is a tricky game. While no one gets it perfect every time, there are moments when it's painfully clear that something went wrong. If you're enjoying the video, feel free to hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss out. Now, without further delay and in no particular order, let's dive into some of the worst matchmaking blunders in MMA history. First up, Cain Velasquez versus Francis Ngannou. In a perfect world with better matchmaking, you could have seen Cain Velasquez make an epic comeback in the UFC's heavyweight division after battling injuries for years, but instead they put him up against Francis Ngannou, the hardest hitter ever to step into the cage. And, well, y'all know how that turned out.
What he has over everybody is power. We have a machine out there called the Power Cube. Francis registered the highest ever power punch.
Do you feel like this is a fight that you can stand in the pocket and win a fight on your feet?
I expect, yes. I'm going to have to stand with them. I'm going to have to throw blows with them in order to do everything else that I want to do. It's a challenge that I would like to take head on.
Maybe the UFC thought Cain's wrestling would be the perfect counter to Francis Ngannou, like Stike Miocic used at UFC 220. But unfortunately, this MMA legend was more or less handed to the Predator on a silver platter. When the fight started, it took Ngannou less than a minute to finish Cain. To make things worse, Cain's knee gave out just as he got hit with a powerful uppercut from the future heavyweight champ. Sadly, that was the last time Cain ever stepped into the Octagon.
How are you feeling?
Man, I just can't believe that happened.
He's had a 2-year layoff. He's older, man. It's tough to come back into this sport, especially against an animal like Francis Ngannou. You know, he had a rough night.
BJ Penn versus Yair Rodriguez is a perfect example of an aging legend getting a bad deal from the matchmakers. At that point in his career, BJ Penn had no business being in the cage with a young rising star like Yair Rodriguez. Despite a string of losses and a legacy that was already at risk of being damaged, Ghana and his team still chose to use this former champ to boost Yair's name.
You're a legend. Nothing to prove in the sport at all. So what was the motivation for you to come back?
For me, this is my whole life. You know what I mean? I love this stuff. Whenever I get embarrassed or whenever I lose bad, I come back 10 times stronger every single time.
How do you see this thing playing out?
It's going to look like a professional versus an amateur.
To put it bluntly, BJ Penn had no chance of winning this fight on the feet. Yair Rodriguez played with him for a round before ending things with a brutal TKO. It was a pointless matchup that didn't even do much to boost Rodriguez's career. Just bizarre matchmaking from the UFC. Now, Sean O'Malley versus Chris Moutinho. This is as bad of a matchup as you'll ever find, though this one wasn't entirely on the UFC. After O'Malley's original opponent had to pull out, he was left without a fight at the last minute. With no other options, the UFC brought in Chris Moutinho, a regional fighter known for his iron chin and unique hairstyle.
Do you get to look at this as a no-lose situation? I mean, right, like you come in on short notice, you come up short, everybody goes, well, what'd you expect?
I'll never be happy with a loss. I'm coming to bring a war the entire time.
Does it make this fight we feel any different? You're fighting a guy who, last week wasn't even in the UFC.
It doesn't change anything for me other than who I get to knock out.
Win, lose, or draw, there will be blood, and I can't wait.
Unfortunately, what followed was a historic beatdown. The future bantamweight champ, Sean O'Malley, used Moutinho as target practice, landing shot after shot. Despite Moutinho's iron chin keeping him in the fight, it was eventually stopped in the third round. It was a brutal and one-sided showcase.
Most savage son of a I've ever met, man.
My hands hurt so bad from punching him in the face. That dude's tough. I've never been so hurt beating someone up.
Pride's a little sore. I don't care how great everybody says the fight is, man. I still lost, and it still hurts.
Before he became bantamweight champ, fans already knew that Petr Yan was a dangerous force. Yet after Uriah Faber came out of retirement and scored a shocking first-round upset over Ricky Simon, the UFC decided to throw him straight into a fight with Yan. Spoiler alert, it wasn't a good idea.
This guy's a very tough opponent. This guy is a knockout artist, so the danger is going to be there, which I love.
People may be using the rhetoric of this matchup more in line for him to have a name on his resume at the end of it. How does that make you feel?
You better be sure that the UFC is documenting my path here, because it's a great storyline for when I take him out and I'm standing there waiting for a belt.
As the fight went on, Yan did what he does best. He got stronger with every passing minute. Eventually, he landed a devastating head kick that basically sent Faber back into retirement. It was a classic case of old versus new, and Faber was outgunned from the start.
I've got 2 stitches, black eye. He's a tough bastard. I gotta give a lot of credit to Don.
Some fights just look bad from the start, and this middleweight matchup between rising star Paulo Costa and a severely depleted Johnny Hendricks was no exception. It felt like a shameless attempt to feed an old star to a new one. Hendricks, once a great welterweight, was a shadow of his former self by the time he reached 185 pounds, unathletic, unmotivated, and clearly on the decline post-USADA. Meanwhile, Costa was a powerful wrecking ball, known for his heavy punches and brutal kicks.
Young opponent in Paolo Borrachino. What do you know about him?
I just know he's a heavy hitter and he's gonna try to push forward. Maybe they want him to whoop my ass and get rid of me.
When the fight began, Hendricks instantly looked out of his depth. While he didn't crumble at the first exchange, he lacked the power and resilience to stand up to the rising star. It was an easy win for Costa, a future title challenger.
The fight was basically an assault. It was an assault. You would never believe that Johnny Hendricks was a former world champion if you saw the way the Eraser beat the out of him. I mean, he just beat the out of him. Johnny is just not the same guy.
Retirement fights in MMA often leave us with a bitter taste. For every great farewell like Robbie Lawler's recent win over Nico Price, there's something like Fedor Emelianenko's rematch with Ryan Bader. This was a fight that didn't need to happen. Fedor had already secured a solid late-career victory over Timothy Johnson in Russia, a moment that could have been his perfect send-off. But instead of retiring on a high note, Bader decided to put him back in the cage with a man who had already knocked him out in the first round.
And watch for that right. Oh, it's going to be over. Big shot. And it's all over.
When they met for the second time, the result was much the same. Instead of leaving on a high note, the last emperor ended his career with an underwhelming and disappointing performance.
That was bittersweet. You know, I idolize him like every other MMA fan and fighter coming up.
But hey, Fedor's legacy is still one of the greatest in heavyweight history. Now John Jones versus Chael Sonnen. This one is a head-scratcher. Sure, putting John and Chael on a season of TV together made sense, but giving Sonnen a title shot, that's where it doesn't quite add up. Even John was surprised, saying, "How did Chael get in the picture as my next opponent?" In reality, Chael had almost no chance of beating Jones. We would have been shocked if that fight even lasted more than a round.
To all those people who say you have no chance, this is not worth buying, that this is a gimmick fight, right? To all those people, what do you say to them?
What I would say to those people is, listen, tune in. I don't know what's going to happen either.
I believe that I could just dominate him and eat him alive.
Jones made it a point to beat Chael at his own game, choosing to fight up close in the clinch before finishing him with brutal ground and pound. Ironically, Chael was just seconds away from potentially becoming the light heavyweight champion, thanks to a horrific broken toe that Jones sustained during the fight.
I was on my feet and I remember I felt a pop. Thought maybe there was a small hole in the canvas that I had snagged my foot on. Didn't hurt at all. After the fight, I looked down and saw blood, and I looked closer at the blood and saw that my toe was pretty much upside down.
All Chael had to do was survive until the end of the first round, and he could have won by doctor stoppage due to Jones' injury, but he couldn't. This was truly one of the greatest mismatches at the highest level.
It's tough. Look, I've had a lot of fights and they haven't all gone my way, but I've only been beat up twice, and that was number 2. To beat a guy is one thing. To beat a guy at his own game is a whole nother. He's the best fighter I've ever fought.
Conor McGregor versus Donald Cerrone. MMA has a strange relationship with tune-up fights. Don't get us wrong, Conor absolutely needed a warm-up before jumping back into competition when he faced Cowboy Cerrone a few years ago. In fact, you could say a tune-up fight would suit him even now. But fighting Cowboy at that point, especially considering how many fights Cerrone had lost leading up to it, felt a bit pointless.
I have to believe that you make this matchup because you think you're going to get an entertaining fight that Conor can win.
I'm going to say Conor McGregor by first round finish.
I think that Conor is going to get him, and I think that Conor is going to get him early.
The usual criticism of you is you can't win the big one like you said yesterday, and you struggle with southpaws. Some would argue then that this could be the worst possible matchup for you. What do you say to those people who think, stylistically this is as hard as it can be for you?
They always say Cowboy can't do the big fights. This is the big one, so we're going to see, you know.
How exactly you get this thing done?
For the Mystic Mike prediction, it will be a KO.
Conor McGregor breezed through Cerrone like he wasn't even there, finishing him with his own signature head kick in just 40 seconds. Sure, Conor was back in the win column, but it didn't feel like much of an accomplishment.
Conor McGregor went out there and absolutely destroyed tonight. It was unbelievable.
Donald showed up. Cowboy wasn't there. Couldn't get going. Couldn't get excited. Couldn't get fired up. Didn't want to be there. Biggest fight, all the attention, my time to shine. Didn't want to be there. It was crazy, man.
Chan Sung-jung, aka the Korean Zombie, is a bona fide legend in the lower divisions, deserving full credit for his grit, determination, and longevity at the top. However, when he was given a title shot against the in-form champion, Alexander Volkanovski, it felt like the UFC was setting him up for a brutal defeat.
I do not believe Zombie is a better fighter than Volkanovski.
Volk's gonna smoke him, dude. He's so good.
Stylistically, this favors the champ heavily. I mean, it's just a stylistic nightmare for the Korean Zombie. The champ wins easily.
Jung is a great fighter, no doubt, but he clearly wasn't at the same level as the champion. Giving him a title shot based on his recent form was a bit of a stretch.
We're going to war, and you're gonna see greatness. Let's go!
On fight night, Volkanovski delivered a one-sided masterclass, beating the Korean Zombie so thoroughly that he had to check in with him to see if he actually wanted to continue. It was a tough sight to watch in a matchup that probably shouldn't have happened in the first place.
What can you say about how good he looked tonight?
Well, I think tonight he came out and made a statement. He looked incredible.
To go out there and make the Korean Zombie look like he did not even belong in there with you whatsoever is absolutely ridiculous.
Told you all week that I'm going to show him on another level. I don't think anyone's ever done that to Zombie. Not like that.
Chuck Liddell versus Tito Ortiz 3 might just be one of the most disgraceful matchups in MMA history. Now we're open to other suggestions in the comments. This one was especially painful. Dana White had to practically beg Chuck Liddell to retire after a series of brutal knockouts. Yet 8 years later, Oscar De La Hoya and Tito Ortiz coaxed the 48-year-old Liddell out of retirement, paying him a hefty sum to basically serve as a lamb to the slaughter against the still active Ortiz.
It's been a minute, right? 8+ years since you've been in the cage, so why now?
I love a challenge. I'm here to show that you're never too old to do anything. I'm ready to knock this fool out.
Chuck Liddell is 50 years old and should not be fighting. The commission that sanctions that fight. Wow.
Chuck, you just got suckered. The joke's on you, buddy. Hope you guys enjoy the fight on Saturday.
In truth, this fight was painful to watch.
Yeah, Chuck is remarkably a lot slower than he was before.
Right now, Chuck does not look all that great.
Yeah, Chuck can't seem to find his feet.
Now what you see right now, first right hand thrown by the down, he's down, he pancakes. But Ortiz saying, let's see if you still got that.
When Tito managed to drop him and finish him in the opening round. His over-the-top celebration just made the whole thing look that much worse. Definitely a rough night for the sport, that's for sure. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on anything. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.